With the success of our 8 October In the Zone conference and a spate of domestic and international travel which kept me on the road for 17 out of 22 days, it's been a while since I've had a chance to discuss the developments at the Perth US Asia Center. And in general, I don't tend to think of myself as overly contrarian. However, 2 weeks ago in Seoul, I was honored to participate in the World Knowledge Forum and was tasked to speak on a panel addressing the Thucydides Trap, the G2, and the role of middle powers. And I found myself in the strange position of disagreeing with almost every core concept behind that panel. To begin with, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Thucydides Trap, this was a very influential article and book written by Harvard University professor Graham Allison, which posited that whenever there is a status quo power and a rising power, there's inevitably conflict. Now, candidly, I don't find that overly compelling in this day and era. I understand the attractiveness of quoting ancient Greek philosophers, and particularly anything that mentions Sparta makes academia cool. But the ancient Greek historian philosopher Thucydides basically posited that war was inevitable due to the rise of Athens and the fear that that instilled within Sparta. And he looked over history and found that in something like 14 of the last 16 cases, when there was a rising power and a status quo power, there was conflict. Unfortunately, however, the era of the Peloponnesian Wars doesn't teach us much about the nuclear era. And so the notion that both China and the United States as nuclear powers are somehow doomed to conflict doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the current context. Equally, the notion that we should understand our world as the divide between the binary China, US, G2 doesn't make a lot of sense, particularly given the focus that we at the Perth US Asia Center place on Japan, rising powers like India, Indonesia, ASEAN as a whole. The world is actually a lot more complex than the G2. It's certainly not a binary. And then finally, the notion of middle power, I think I've addressed before. South Koreans in particular, given the unique permeability between academics and government, tend to use academic constructs like middle power to explain the roles of nation states and the behavior of nation states. But policymakers, including those in Australia, don't tend to use terms like middle power. Australia and South Korea both are members of the G20. If you look at 180, 190 so countries around the world, certainly that's not a middle power or middling in any way, shape, or form. But more importantly, Australia and South Korea both are highly influential in the region. If you put these three concepts together, I think you don't quite get a clear understanding of the fundamental challenges of our era. And those challenges really are, how do countries like Australia, South Korea, and all of our partners in the region deal with the continuing uncertainties surrounding the rise of China and relatively new uncertainties surrounding questions of the United States' presence in the region, reliability as an ally, etc. I'm happy to say that this coming week, we are hosting the inaugural WA Indo-Pacific Defense Dialogue, working together with Defense West, with the WA state government, for the first time bringing together Japanese, Korean, Indian, Australian, US, and other security specialists, as well as the Minister of Defense, the Shadow Minister of Defense, the Minister of Defense Industry, the Chief of Navy, and a raft of real strategic thinkers to kind of rustle through some of these very issues in the Indo-Pacific. The conference is this coming Tuesday, the 30th of October, and I'm happy to say that it's sold out. I'm also happy to pleased to note that we've launched the latest in our series of Indo-Pacific Insight publication. Our own Peter Dean, the Senior Fellow at the Perth US Asia Center and Pro Vice Chancellor for Education here at UWA, has written on the Australian Defence Forces and the Indo-Pacific operating environment. Together, will help formulate some of the thoughts we have going forward. We look forward to engaging with you as we round out what has been a very busy 2018 and as we continue to wrestle with issues that are far more timely than the thoughts of an ancient Greek philosopher. Thank you.